Welcome everyone. Today we'll talk about how we can evaluate and select the right MDM solution for our organization. The goal is going to find a balance between cost, security, and flexibility. It's a really basic interview on how to come up and write a proposal. It's not in-depth, it's not sophisticated, it's not fancy, it's very high level.
Okay, so speaker introductions. I'm known as Mac Lemur in Mac Admin Slack. The human name is Louise. You'll probably know me from such comments at Mac Admins that's asking for cookies or cats. Currently, I'm just in between jobs, semi-retired, but I have been a manager at several different large organizations.
I'm John or Tuxedo. I'm maker of cookies, wearer of oversized coats, of which I look amazing in, and I'm also one of the lead Monkey Report devs.
And then last but not least, I'm Alex. I work in the airplane arena, so we'll just go with that. I won't mention anything about Smurfs or jets. And I love cats. I have a cat myself, and in this photo here, although this year it's a little bit smaller, I am trying to compete with Craig. Hair Force 2, just saying.
So by show of hands, who has better hair, Alex or Craig? Okay.
Wait a minute, you didn't even ask.
Audience participation is important. We all value your feedback. And of course, Ms. Betty Crocker, we all know and love. She has been feeding us for decades. She needs no introduction.
So just to reiterate, this presentation basically is not an actual comparison. It's just for illustrative purposes only. We're not going to endorse anything, whether it's open source or closed source. Don't want to get into that holy war. Everything is done for examples and amusement.
All right, so we first need to identify our need before we do our bake-off or run a proposal. So we have identified our need, and Alex, what is our need?
We need an MDM. We don't have one for some reason.
How dare we?
Being admins, you would think it would be easy, but there are multiple different points of view in this group. You got all the different personalities kind of swishing together, and
So the first personality is a corporate point of view. So I'm very corporate-y. So you may hear from your manager, we need an MDM to manage all the things. And I'd want a more closed source MDM for a couple of reasons. Point fingers when something happens. Ease of support. I can open a ticket and scream, why is it broken? Known costs. Cannot underestimate this one. Finance loves to know what the costs are going to be. They're going to be very regular. And theoretically, a larger support base. I say theoretical because your mileage may vary depending on the platform. So a manager's thoughts on closed source are very simple. There's a strong preference for the cloud or SaaS. That's the way the world is going. We like that. The vendor will fix it and update it. So I don't have to do anything. If there's an update, yay, it gets pushed out automatically. Server security or system security is handled by the vendor. So if, Superstorm Jimmy comes, they're responsible for fixing it. And I can just get a report and send it to the board of directors and say, see, we're cool. Support tickets and contracts. Anything goes wrong, again, I have somebody to point a finger at and say, you need to fix the thing. I already mentioned known costs. Here's something else in a corporate environment. Regulatory compliance. The larger you are, the more regulations you'll have. We've all heard of GDPR, SOC 2, HIPAA, et cetera, so on and so forth. If they have all the certs, you don't have to worry about it. And sometimes training is actually included. You can buy a huge package, and they'll train your people on all the things. Um, so this is the way a corporate manager would see it, a checkbox. Am I checking the boxes? Yay? Cool.
However, I want to present the case for considering an open source solution that offers long-term flexibility. Open source offers things that closed source solution cannot. It gives us the flexibility to implement it as we want it, while not really being locked into one vendor. The data can stay in-house for the most part. I was holding that too far away from my face, but now we can all hear me. The data can stay in-house. And also with open source, we can customize it more or less because we can see how it works and why is it doing what it's doing, and so we can work within its boundaries. Being the open source, you can also get to know the developers and the community themselves. And that enables you to get a faster reaction from the vendors for new features that come out instead of begging and waiting for years for closed source solutions to even acknowledge them.
I'm offended by that remark as the devil's advocate for the closed source and the proprietary world. Just note that when it comes to the open source area, there's some things that that you have to consider, because in our proprietary world we get everything all bundled in. But in the world of open source, usually when you're looking for an MDM, it's not just going to be covered by just that one product. You're going to have to bring on all these other tools to, complement it, such as app management, OS patching being a big one, reporting, and then if you want to add a little flair, login window replacement or password syncing are things that people do enjoy having. So, specifically, at least for the sake of our conversation here, some of those open source tooling that you might look into might not be required. Something like Monkey Nudge for updating, or Superman, Monkey Report, a custom login window replacement I can think of in the open source world would be like Xcreds from Two Canoes. Nice shout out. But I will let the lemur get the bake-off going.
So to kick this off for the bake-off, there are a couple of things we need to do. The first one is you preheat your oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit or 168 Celsius. The most important thing you have to do, however, is define your needs. I'm going to be focusing a lot on that. What is it that you need? And then you get to evaluate the options. Do research, see what's out there. Then the fun part, you run the bake-off. That means a POC, testing all the things, and then the unfun part, presenting your results.
So, let's begin. This is our first phase, and we'll go through the process of how you actually start your evaluations. So usually, like, my starting point is that I'm going to look for real world information. Pretend that I didn't know as much as I know from coming to this wonderful conference. So I'd probably start out with the vendor pages. It's all going to be a little bit of marketing fluff, or like Gartner. Being like, those marketing pages as well, because, they tend to bubble up at least the major players in an area. In our case here, the Mac admin Slack, she need no introduction. If you're feeling spicy, Reddit, GitHub as well, because John is looking into some of those open source tools, and so, they probably have GitHubs. Some proprietary stuff, some of their stuff is in GitHub as well, so you can see, are they contributing to open source, even if they're, they themselves proprietary. And then blogs as well, maybe social media, Reddit, social media, right? But Louise, maybe you can go. I see RFP stuff. You can go. You can do that.
Thanks, buddy. So after you do all your research, you have to reach out to the vendors. And usually it's called a RFP, request for proposal. It's used in government, education, corporate enterprises, nonprofits, bakeries, and that's only a half joke, because if you want a cake, It's a request for a cake. The proposal format. So, now this is from a more structured point of view, so you don't have to follow this exactly. But if you're going to present this to your manager, which is what we are pretending that we are going to do, you should have an executive summary. What is it that you want to do? I want an MDM. Why do we need an MDM? Because we need to manage all the things. Because right now, everyone can do anything willy-nilly. You want updates, you want security, you want to deploy applications, you want to lock the machine down. This is why we need it. And then a quick company overview. What is the company? We make cookies. And then you have your proposed solution of it's an MDM and it will do these things. You insert your requirements. So we'll get back into the requirements in a little bit, but in the RFP, you have listed out what exactly you want the thing to do. And then you have a high-level overview of the implementation plan. That means you purchase it, you install it, you do some of the basic stuff like testing it, so on and so forth, and how you're going to roll it out. The proposal will also include pricing, because once you do the proposal and send it off, the first question is going to be, how much is this going to cost me? So you should have quotes attached. Any SLAs internally or from the vendor. So if something breaks, are you on the platinum plan where you have 2-hour response? Or are you on like the bronze plan where it's 24 hours response? Do you get a live human or do you get a chat bot? Any references? So this can be put kind of in proposed solution, but it's like, look at this awesome Reddit post from Zug. Zug says this is the most awesome tool because it does all the things. And then, very important, is legal terms. If it's closed source, even open source. Where do they process your data? So if they have AI, if you're a company based in the United States, is it processed offshore in wherever? If you're European based, does it stay in the EU? Payment plans, if they go belly up, or there's a security breach. These are the kind of things that also should be researched, and your legal department will be asking you. Ask me how I know. So now this is very wordy. We'll have the slides, but I'm going to go over the various parts of these things. And just for reference, this was created by ChatGPT because I did this very late one night and my brain wasn't working. So if there are any M dashes in there, extra M dashes we didn't get out, sorry. So the purpose of the RFP is to invite qualified vendors to submit their proposals for an MDM. And you define your goals in the RFP in the proposal section of exactly what is it we are going to do. You insert the background of your organization, and you'll include a basic high level of the infrastructure. How many Macs, PCs, mobile devices, do you use Entra, Okta, Open Directory, and very important, the pain points. What are you trying to solve? You just want to manage mobile? Awesome. If you want zero trust, you have to define that. Now, requirements. Yes, a large word salad. But these are your functional and technical requirements. You need to have this laid out beforehand, before anything else, because otherwise you won't know what you're doing. These are the technical requirements. There are obviously a lot more, but all these things make sense in your life a lot easier. Integration with your IDP, so you can have single sign-on. Can you remotely support a machine? Automated device enrollment, APA access, uptimes. Still more examples. Role-based access control, security, remote wipe, vendor qualifications. Now again, this is very important for, at least in a corporate world. How long have they been around? I have had this question asked at multiple roles of if you compare large established company that technically is the gold standard in Apple MDM versus a newer company. One's been around for, 15, 20 years. Another, maybe 5 years. Legal and finance actually take a look at that, especially if they're like Series A or B startup. That makes them twitchy. Have they done similar deployments? If you're a small company, 100 people, it doesn't matter. But if you have like 10,000 Macs, can I get a use case, or can you put me in contact with someone who's done this to see how it works at scale? Because 100 Macs versus 10,000 Macs is very different. So case studies. And any compliance certifications. This makes basically the people above your manager very happy. You can simply say, "Ooh, look, certification. Yay, okay, we're happy, we have checkboxes." Scope of work. Who's going to actually do the install? Are you going to do it? Will you do it with their help, or will they do it? You need to define your scope of work. This is also, again, very important, more so in larger corporations. But what is expected, and what are the milestones? And then there's the evaluation criteria, which I think Alex will go into a little bit more. How do you evaluate it? And that's usually based on your requirements and how much weight you give them. So if you want to be able to remotely wipe machines, you weigh that more heavily than can you brand, let's say, a self-service portal. And just want to emphasize, yes, I was hungry when that picture was taken, but how to share your needs. Once you share this with the vendors, you have to document your requirements, which I already went through and bored everybody beforehand. Provide use cases. So what are your use cases? Not only for IT, but let's say compliance, security. So that way the vendor knows, hey, we can target our proposal to you.
This is my slide. So here we'll learn how to build a weighted scorecard to keep our decisions objective and aligned with our priorities. We'll assign weights to different elements, score out the MDM solutions, and finally compare the totals. All right, so these are the 5 factors that the orange cat is figuring out that we will use to evaluate our MDM solution. We'll assign weights to reflect their importance within our environment.
No, it's me again. So one of the things is, I already mentioned, cost. It just isn't your licensing, but you need to consider your infrastructure, support, training, admin time. So do you have a dedicated admin to the tool? If yes, that's a cost. If they only do it part-time, that's a fractional cost. So these are things that could be asked of you. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. Small company, they're not going to care. A larger company, they may actually wonder what these costs are. And then securing the stack. From an InfoSec point of view, how are we going to secure this? As I point the finger.
Yeah, now we went back to slightly technical stuff, so then they throw me back in here. Ugh. But, you know, as I mentioned earlier, closed source comes with its benefits. And as Lemur has stressed, it's really being able to, just like Lemur did to me, point the finger, you know. But other things that are super, super important and you want to dialed in would be, you know, in this case for MDM, it would be patching, like professional services. I'm actually going through this right now where we had a organization that we were working with. They brought in professional services, and then halfway through, they actually laid them off. So I won't mention who, but you know, these are kind of those things that when it comes to the closed source stuff that you have to consider as well from the security standpoint.
While that's all nice and fine, open source offers a transparency into how it works, which could lead to faster security fixes and often interaction directly with the developers. And as before, it avoids the vendor lock-in because you're almost always hosting your own MDM or you know where it lives. Your data is yours, and again, you know where it lives. This in turn, though, does put a large burden on you to make sure that your data is secure and your infrastructure is up to date. So, key part of like any software is it needs to be flexible. Your company does not sit there and change. Line must go up. So that means our MDM solution needs to be flexible as well. And those changes could be as simple as supporting a new feature in Mac OS to complicated things like adhering to new government regulations.
Okay. When it comes to who carries the bag, this is a reiteration once again. Closed source, you get to point fingers. You get to, you know, say like, hey, we need to, you know, have things set in within a certain time frame, get responses. And when considering other things as well, sometimes there's community support, whether that's closed or open source, you know, you can have that. And you do want to evaluate whether or not there's in-house expertise in what you're looking at as well. What is the pool of knowledge that you have, you know, from the people within the organization itself? And then in general, I hate to say it, industry standards. You know, they say the adage is, you know, no one got fired for bringing in Microsoft. That, you know, in some places that's what managers are looking for. Well, you know, what is everyone else using? Like, we want to do that. So those are definitely like things to kind of keep in mind, and that kind of ties into the overhead of those things. You know, so if we're taking an in-house item, like, you know, how are those updates going to happen? Like, is it a policy related thing? Is John going to be going there and having to update the server in the middle of the night when it stops working? And that data in there, like Lemur had mentioned, there's everything kind of has data in it. So we need to either clean up that data or secure that data. So like, how are you going to do that internally? If you have a vendor that's external, what compliance standards are they following that you can assure you that they are doing the things that you would do if you're doing it on premise? And again, staff knowledge, super important. So my favorite part of the process, and I think a lot of people's favorite part of process of considering things, is actually getting to mess with it, you know, trying it out, kicking the tires, so to speak. It is super important to run demos, and just to let a lot of companies, speaking to you companies out there, if you have a demo instance that I can just spin up without having talked to a salesperson, makes me very happy, because I can try it and really try it. And when you are going to do your trials or you're kicking up the tires, make sure that you're using real scenarios, like something that like people are actually going to be doing, and getting this one's important. It's not just for our like theoretical situation that we're in right now, but getting buy-in and feedback from all the people, all the stakeholders, all the people involved. You know, if you don't get everyone involved, you know, curveballs and stuff like that can happen, where, you know, you find out things that you didn't know could happen. So, but Louise is gonna. I see numbers again. Louise, please.
Oh, thanks, buddy. So when you set up your evaluation, when you need to review your requirements, and once you put those in, you can rank them with a weighted score. An example of the weighted score is must have, nice to have, and it's a bonus. Whoops.
Wow, lemur.
This is why managers are not allowed to touch things. So this is just a basic example of a weighted score, where functionality is given a certain weight, but it's also based on the cost and your requirements and the features. So functionality is given 30% and a score out of 8. Depending on where you are, corporate, small company, cost can be a very big driving factor and could probably even drive out certain vendors. Vendor support, scalability, and security. These numbers are made up. We basically rolled the dice and said, this is the number we're going to put in here.
Now that we've created our scorecard, we can create our proposal to get buy-in on our MDM contenders. do testing, read reviews, and fill out our scorecard with what we've learned. But getting buy-in can be complicated, even though it is very necessary to get traction for something new in your corporate world. In our case, we need buy-in from legal, finance, and IT. Getting this buy-in is often easier by giving them deliverables so they make informed decisions on what they're purchasing. We're going to use metaphorical Kumasatra to frame the importance of compatibility and flexibility within our tech stack. When writing your proposal, it's important to focus on what is important to you, and keeping in mind that what may be important to you it may not be important to finance or legal.
So we're getting closer to decision time, and in our case, for this scenario and whatnot, there's a couple of takeaways for us. As mentioned, open source is freeing but not free. We used or tried to be as objective as possible by having it structured out really well. And then, as I mentioned before, getting that buy-in, there is an element of transparency and trust that we wanted to cultivate as well. And ultimately, for us to make the decision on this, and what we really want is we want something that's going to grow with us naturally. So, the final scorecard. Yes, the numbers are still made up. We're not going to actually give you our viewpoints on that. That would cause so much damage. We can't have that. So, generally, if you're making a scorecard, just the criteria is whatever you need for your thing. Here right now we're talking about MDM solutions, but quite literally, you need to distill down in several categories that make sense for the RFP or the goal that you're trying to complete. These were the ones that we came out here, and now we get to do my least favorite part. You got to present it to the manager. Hi, manager. I've been totally nice to you this whole time, right?
Where are my cookies? So once your presentation is fully baked and written up, you'll present to your manager, either during a one-on-one or team meeting. I assume we all have those. And you'll present your findings to your manager in a written format and maybe a presentation. The reason for being written is because that presentation will be passed around, so other people can review it. It goes to your manager's manager, the manager's manager's manager, finance. Everyone can see it and then make comments. This allows basically everyone to have an informed opinion and then also ask you a lot of questions.
And then after the manager, you wanted to present your findings with the stakeholders, often the heads of departments or other key people, or it could be Frank from finance. This helps secure funding and solidifying buy-in from them as well. One of the key points should be to request to move forward then with the winner of the bake-off.
Guys, what if we're taking this, in the wrong direction? I just remember earlier how I mentioned curveballs. Yeah. We might be going in a slightly different direction.
So even though we go through a whole bake-off, we come with differing slides. Another department will sometimes win out and push us through something completely else, something completely differently entirely. In this scenario, finance overrules us and our manager and picks Intune because it's free through our Microsoft 365 package. And everyone's happy because no one's happy.
So we've gotten to the end of it. Obviously, there's cookies now, that we've gone through the whole process or whatnot. But quite literally, that scenario that we had there, we took you through everything. We did all that work, putting all that together, and then in the end, you still saw something else that you did not even consider at all, and it got overridden. That is extremely common. Doing all that work. Don't be discouraged if stuff like that happens. Just roll with it. work together with your stakeholders. The more buy-in you get in the beginning, the less likely that scenario that we just had right now were to happen to you. So with that being said, Lemur will answer all the questions. We're going to go head out and buy.
And Lemur will delegate, but it's besides the point.
Not delegation.
I know, right? Are there any questions? Yeah.
Can you catch? I have a question for you.
Yes.
Well, he never got the.
Can you throw?
Yeah.
I evidently cannot throw.
So one thing I was going to say is, like, when you're presenting your findings to your manager, if there's like a product that you strongly prefer, I would generally recommend that you basically make that pitch and that case to your manager. Don't just say, here's my findings, here's my scorecard. Like, that doesn't sell the story of this product, their vendor was really great to work with. It does all the things we need. It felt great to use when we tried it, that kind of thing. So when you're selling it, you're basically selling the product to your management of this is what I want. This is what I prefer. This is my strong opinion of what's going to be best for us.
Absolutely. Thank you. You're absolutely right on that. Normally you'd rank it number one and why. One thing in the scorecard is you could have comments to say this product Zug is wonderful because it does all of these things so much better, whether it's the UX or anything. But you are absolutely right that if you have a preferred product, absolutely you should sell that.
Yeah, I think I've made the mistake in the past of this product's so much obviously better, ranked higher in our scoring. That should be obvious. Everyone should see that, and just expect the numbers to speak for themselves. And they don't. You have to sell it. You have to make the case.
You're absolutely right on that. Pam, behind you.
So, taking what you said and expanding on it, what do you do when? How do you influence when you don't have influence? Or when you don't, no, how do you influence when you don't have the power? That's really more it. You want a solution, it's a better one, your manager, their manager says, no, this is what we want.
So there's multiple parts, multiple answers to that. The first one is you tell the story of why this is better. You explain that, yes, you may want this, but it falls short here. My choice does it better and easier and has a track record. So you tell the story and you keep adding stories and the use cases. The second part of it is you try to build allies within the other departments. So if, let's say, your product is much better on the security side, you can go to security and say, hey, I need your help with this. Can you give me some supporting information of what you want to do? So when you bake that into stakeholder requirements, you bolster it with security backing you. Now, again, curveballs happen, so you may absolutely get overridden. This has happened before, and this will happen again. But by trying to gain allies in the other departments to show your use case, that will help build momentum when you're not in the room. I don't know if that answers your question, but it's...
And to add to that as well, when Lemur's right, getting buy-in and all that, is super important. But don't be fooled that the scorecard, all that stuff, all that work, there is inherent bias in it, and you can kind of like Lemur said, bolster the elements that you're oh, you know what? I noticed that my manager really, really is worried about let's say vendor support. Well, then I'm going to be speaking with that vendor, getting every little detail about support. Maybe they're oh, well, we really want off-hour support or something like that, and it needs to come down a certain price. You can, if you're doing all this and you're working with someone that can get into contact with the vendor, or you're directly in contact with said vendor, you can say, hey, not to play good cop, bad cop, but my manager really wants that like support. Like, you guys are losing out potentially, and I really want to work with you, but you're losing out in these areas. Like, you can do stuff like that, or like maybe it might be expensive, but as Lamer said, you can go like to security and be like, hey, well, this product can potentially cover some of the compliance requirements that we need to go through, so we don't have to buy another product. Oh, well, you know what? I found a cost savings within that. And then you add that to your RF or the presentation that you're giving to the stakeholders, and you're like, hey, no, this is actually saving us money too. So you always kind of, the way I see it, you're telling a story, but you have all these people that want to see a story, and so you make a story for each one, or you make the story work for all the different pieces or peoples. I have nothing else to add to that.
I'm going to assume yes.
Another thing I would kind of recommend is kind of look at like all the different products you're considering and consider like where they fall short, and could we make them like work for us if the company was able to provide us like an integration or an API to fill the needs where they fall short and customize it for us, or could we pay like consulting services to build something for us to help do that, or do we have in-house talent that can help us fill in that gap? So it's not just about like what is the best product, but also what is the best product with some help, and can we like either negotiate that as part of the contract? If we're maybe a big enough customer, we could potentially do that, or if it's Intune, well, maybe not. We already own it, so they're not gonna. We don't have any leverage there. So yeah, there's a lot of different pieces to that process that you could try to bake into the negotiation.
And to add two components to that, one other thing that we haven't brought up that I think about sometimes, is it really the best product? Am I really picking the best thing? Like, I could actually be wrong, and I have been wrong thinking I'm like, oh, well, if we get this one thing out, like that will be the thing that like makes it the greatest thing. And I'm like, oh, no, actually I was just really like excited about this one tool or whatnot. So like don't lose sight of like why you're doing that thing. And to give more example of like a situation where you're like, I'm not super jazzed about the product, but like it actually was better, is we partner with a large tech company that they could have went to like the bigger player or the main player that everyone runs to, but because this company actually they've always kind of been in the betas with them, they've always worked and collaborated with that company. They're like, they might not be the most cost effective, or they might not be the perfect business, but they are a partner that will work with us, and when something goes wrong, we actually know the people to reach out to get assistance. That is like an intangible and a real world example of that happening, where they're like, oh, you know what, we will still, they're raising their prices, that sucks, we'll try to negotiate, but we'll stick with them because they do a really good job of working with us and tipping us off to changes and things like that.
That can also be an advantage with going like with a smaller company, is that they're more agile and they're more likely to work with you and make changes for you. Where if you go with like Intune, it's like, okay, well, you get what you get, and that's it.
Don't know what you're talking about.
No, you're right. I mean, well, when I was at a large institution, we had multiple vendors, and one of the vendors knew we already had another MDM, but they always offered inducements of like, hey, so we do this, we can do that, we could help you here. So yes, there is an ability to leverage negotiation, but as we mentioned, MDM doesn't cover a lot of things. So to quote Microsoft, you can embrace and extend with the stuff. So whether it's Nudge or Nomad, I know Nomad doesn't exist anymore theoretically, but whatever, we all get the point.
Do
Yes.
you
We
have?
got plenty of time.
Yes.
No,
yes.
that's okay. That's I'm going to give you opportunities to show more things. Do you have actual examples of either presentations you've done that you could share, obviously, or templates that you've used for presentations or your written proposals? Do you, you may not have any at the ready, and I'm sorry, I don't mean to put you on the spot.
At the ready, no. Everything that I would have is written specifically in the style that any other old co would approve of or use. I think within the presentation, it has the basic outline of what you would do for an RFP.
Yeah, the issue you run into that is most of I would say like 90% of the times, anytime that I put anyone together, it's it's themed to the company. It's structured each company does have a slight little flavor of how they do it. So yeah, I wouldn't be able to or have any of that available for anyone, sadly, because yeah, it's usually kind of proprietary. Like,
And sometimes, like the RFP, this was, obviously that side was written by me, as corporate, but sometimes, that's usually used when you're going to VARs or larger companies. But if you go for a smaller company, you go to their website and it says email sales@sales.com, or you just put something into a web page with your information. So
I was asking more on the RFP is one thing, and that's going to be corporately written. I meant more when you're going back to your team or you're going back to your manager, and now you've got to create a presentation to give to your manager to get their buy-in. Those proposals or those templates, you're not going to just throw them the proposal from company ABC and their vendor ABC. You're going to develop a proposal that more speaks to your points. But there has to be look, having not been in corporate America to do this, I've done it as a vendor selling to a client, but not as a manager selling up to a manager where you don't really have power. So you're talking about influencing without having any power.
Yeah, most of the time, like the RFP, I just import that into PowerPoint. It creates the points, and then I use those points just to flesh it out.
and in my situation, like it was more dependent on the manager or the team that I was working with. So right now, my manager does like technical points, but doesn't like going in too deep in the weeds. But I also know that like them enough to know the potential of seeing one bullet point and really wanting to know information there. So I kind of always have like a notes or information available at the ready. But you are totally correct. Like the thing that I would present to my team, that is going to be all technical. It's going to be technical and flow charts and a couple of bullet points on things that I know that they're going to hit on. For manager, it's probably going to be more of the charts and then some of the general bullet points. And it's doing the same thing that we're doing here. Actually, I might not usually include a scorecard for like my team. And if it's like I'm really going for it, I might include it for my manager, being like, hey, because he's like, all right, well, that company is doing that thing, and then did you think about that? A, did you think about B? Did you think about C? And I'm like, all right, he's making a scorecard by grilling me about it. I'm like, I can come back and that's the other thing too. It's not always going to be like, oh, I'm doing one big presentation and it's going to be pretty. It might be, hey, I want to start the conversation, open it up, come back, make a small presentation, go do the POC, the demo, do my research that I was doing. This is kind of an structure how I would do it. And then come back and then bring those other elements in, and then build out that scorecard so that every time we come back, we're not talking about the same thing or whatnot. Because that's also happened to me. I've learned that I can come back and then we get derailed by something else, but we never actually, my boss never actually agreed upon any of the elements. So I'm trying to do a bake-off, and he keeps changing the requirements. So if you have them like as you're building them out, and you're like, hey, well, on this day we agreed on that, it changes, it evolves.
So what I hear you saying is that potentially you could protect yourself from that non-committal by maybe coming with two solutions
Well,
that would fit the bill and doing comparisons that way, and maybe you're more likely to get buy-in if you give. When I was presenting to clients, when I was trying to sell them whatever upgrade it was, I would give them three choices. I would give them a choice that was like the Cadillac of choices and had all the bells and whistles, and was the super expensive one, and then I would give them a solution that, of course, they wanted their budget to fit, which was not very functional and probably would end up being more expensive in the end. And then there was something in the middle. So I sort of found that when I did it that way, they almost always gravitated to the middle one, and it sounds really manipulative. Yeah. Okay, it was. But it always made them feel better having a choice that they were saying, oh, well, you've done really good work, but now let's.
I would say you should always have choices going, like at least 2 to 3 going on. Like when you got it boiled down to one, and you're doing this like RFP style process, whatnot, it is kind of like I know some people that are dealing, like I have friends of mine that are dealing with that right now, where it's like all the solutions kind of got knocked off, but you have one, basically the actual solution. Like there's really only one solution, but then for some reason you keep getting asked to like have like a tertiary thing that you're like, we're never really going to actually do that. Why are we comparing it to that? You want to have multiple options, like actual options, and if you boil it down to one, I would say doing the comparison is kind of hard at that point.
Is there something a vendor has done to like really impress you and kind of win you over? Like even if you didn't end up going with them, but kind of made you wish you did, just because they really impressed you or did something cool or kind of sold you on them?
I think the first thing would be flexibility and understanding. So at my last company, demo environments are usually 15 days. Sometimes we can get 30, but for one vendor, we had multiple issues happening during that time, and we pivoted. So when we had meetings with them, we're like, we're sorry, this happened, we can't get to it. So we were able to get stuff extended. Because we were looking at them, and they wound up being the runner-up. But that ability to just be very flexible and understand is something that's very impressive. The second thing I would say is, on the first sales call, having a pre-sales engineer be able to actually have a really strong working demo and be able to walk you through the stuff and being flexible, I think is very important. Versus I've had other vendors who was like, it's just a salesperson, and then they stumble through it and then say, this is just the intro call, I'm gonna get you on somebody else, and that somebody else only knows a little more. The third call is then with the pre-sales engineer, so that's the flip side, that leaves a sour taste in your mouth. But I think flexibility and understanding that we don't fit into boxes is probably the thing that most impresses me.
John, do you have anything to add? No? Have you been impressed by a vendor before?
No. That's why I'm open source. I impressed myself with Monkey Report. It's like, wow, I did that 10 years ago. How did I do it? But I did it.
For me, vendors that have impressed me, or exactly what Louise is saying, is that they listened, they were flexible, like in their calls, and understanding like what that company does, and being able to have a demo that potentially has data that is relevant to them, like, and going into that with that, like seriously helps like when we're looking at something that, especially something that we're not from like MDMs, like I'm familiar with it enough. I'm like, just give me the demo instance. You don't have to do a sales pitch. Give me your documentation. I'll get through it. Like, but there's some products where I'm like, okay, like I haven't dealt with like this client before or whatnot. I'm like, can you, give me that call, that demo, make it less about like your sales slides and more about the product itself, because that like just sitting through that, and then if a company tells you that their name is X, please call them by their name. Like we it's the nature of having a parent company. They call us the parent company. I'm like, no, but my email says it, and I've said it to you in an email like 3 times. Like, please just like get the company name right. The little thing. That's my little gripe thing. But the company recently, I'd say a couple of companies that I haven't gotten to like bring in yet that I want to bring into our company, that I just really, it is a product that is really good, and I'm just like literally waiting for like a couple of compliance things. And what sold me was the demo. Coming to Mac Admins, doing a demo of their product. I know we don't like a lot of vendor sessions, but sometimes like having something like just being very honest about like what it is. It's a product, but it does all these things, and seeing it, I'm like, oh, that helps me so much more than marketing website that is generic, that has pretty colors and a couple of buzzwords of that all the other vendors have. So.
And just to build on that, being reachable. I think that's something that's very important. During the call, after when you're doing the demo, having something technical to say. So I'm doing the thing. I know I've broken the thing. I'm not sure what I've broken. Can you point me in the right direction? Without sending me a KB, just can we get onto a Zoom call, whatever, and just point me in the direction and explain what I did, how I broke it.
It's also like a good trial run for how their support experience might be as well when you're in that scenario.
Our best vendors that we work, like the vendors that I like constantly, I'm like, that's a good vendor. If I went to another place and I had the same need, I would get that vendor. Are the vendors that we have direct chats with, that at any time, we're not expecting them to answer after hours, but any one of us on our team can reach out to you. Those are the vendors that I'm like, oh, I really like them. Like, and you can't always do that, and I know some companies might abuse that, but it's definitely helps so much. And we have like one of our bigger vendors that doesn't do that, and like constantly I'm just like, why can't they be like these other people? Like, they try to avoid us, but they're so large that it's one of those Microsoft Intune situations where it's like, well, they're big, so we use them. Oh, okay, but they are responsive in other ways. But my favorite ones are the ones I can. Hey, Jonathan, like we had an issue today where we got this alert, and we did the X, Y, Z, and it kept still throwing an error. Here's the screenshots, and then they usually say, "Did you put in a ticket yet?" And I'm like, ugh, hate when people use that on me. But then
that's for me to tell.
Yeah, I'm like, no, I'm the one who does that. Don't use my line against me. But I'm fine with putting a ticket, because if I just put the ticket in first, I know that it's going to go to tier 1. And in a certain situation where I've shot the whole thing several times in several different ways, I'm like, I don't need the person being like, hey, did you turn it off and on again? Like, no, I'm like, I'm sorry. I did that and that and that. But usually I'll reach out to them first, then place the ticket so then they can grab it right away. And they're usually good with that. And like having that like channel open with them has been like game changer for these type of things, and getting things solved quickly. I'm like, I don't want to tangle up your support person or your support staff and your engineers. I'm like, we generally probably know what the solution is. We just need you to help us do it. So it's not always like that.
As part of the RFP process, would you ever like intentionally break something or pretend it's broken just to see how they handle it and how they do their support?
I know he would.
Like, in the RFP process, I'm sometimes like, I'm going to play an end user if it's end user facing and click all the buttons, see how it breaks. Can I break it? I'm usually pretty good at breaking said thing. And then I'm like, okay, now let's play the engineer. Can I fix the thing I broke? And then if I can't, I'm like, hey, support, I really broke it. I really, really broke it. Can you help me fix it? And if they can't, I know, okay, so this is either a really awesome bug, or their support is really bad, or something completely different. So yeah, I do sometimes purposely try to break the thing, and it can also often lead to like a better rapport with the salesperson of like, oh hey, you're the guy that broke it because you put a 5 megabyte file in there and it only wanted 1 megabyte, but it took 5 megs and you broke everything. Like that.
Sounds very specific. It's almost like it happened.
It did. It happened. Yes. By pure accident on my part. That was not a purpose. An on-purpose thing. So yeah, you can definitely lead to that better rapport because then the salesperson has a memorable experience that is a memorable experience of you or that person.
I guess it's also then an exploration of like how good is their telemetry and logs that's going to help me troubleshoot this myself, but then also how good is that stuff to send to support so they can figure out what's wrong quicker and easier as well. So like that's another way to explore that, which is great.
Yeah, I've worked at a long line of bosses that have a really good ability of breaking things in unusual ways, kind of like what John does here, and like quite literally like reaching out to support, sales, being like, hey, like, you know, here's a thing that broke, here's everything that we did, kind of like a ticket thing, but usually these are a little bit more critical bugs that are found, and really just at first it kind of would maybe seem like complaining, but then like it's a two-way street. The vendor gets to see like, oh, you're a person that really, you're not a person that says give me the new features just to give me the features. Oh, you actively ask us to turn on a beta feature to actually try it and actually put it through its paces and actually give feedback. You know, like Apple loves feedback. My boss is really good at getting us to like. He's like, no, I saw an article that they now release this in beta. Try it out. Like, go try it before they've gotten it out. I know I won't put it into production just yet. Half the stuff ends up in production anyway. But, you know, having that rapport with the vendor, salespeople, stuff like that, I think is also important for us on the other side of things to give back as well, because it's good. It makes the product better and the experience better for everyone. My random tangent.
Are we all happy and done with questions? Yes? Well, then you're all free to go. You have 17 minutes before the next session, or 17 minutes extra for the next session. Thank you all very much.